Hello, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to today's webcast. We are going to be talking about the EPM Cloud Framework. I'm super excited to be sharing this content with you today. Bear with me one second while I share my screen. So hopefully you guys are seeing my screen at this point. I only have just a few quick slides and then we're actually going to jump into and off-road into the cloud framework. So again, we're in December, it's demo month. So I'm really excited. I don't know if any of you guys are Magnolia Farms. They used to have demo week on the home improvement show with Chip and Joanna Gaines. So we're going to taking that process, except we're doing a different kind of demo. And we're going to be actually just in the application showing you live demos. So with that, I do have just a quick few slides. I just want to make sure you guys know, again, I'm Tracy McMullen. And interRel Consulting offers EPM and BI services. We're award-winning, lots of experience with our consultants, and we offer kind of a full range of services, from consulting to training to support. If you guys need any help, we would love to help you. And then last, just wanted to show kind of the upcoming webcast. So again, it's demo month. Today we're talking about just the EPM Cloud Framework. So I'm going to be talking about some of the tools, features, functions that really are across the EPM Cloud. Whether it's Planning Cloud or FCC, and we'll talk a little bit about PCM as well. Next week is really going to focus on some of the planning specifics, and we'll walk through some of the pre-built modules. And then exciting to show you guys SBase 19C. Glenn Schwartzberg will be taking you guys through that content. He may even also share some nuggets on the upcoming SBase 21C. With that, and then we're going to take a holiday break. I think most of you guys, like us, are ready for the end of 2020, and we'll take a break and then be excited to join back with you in January. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second while we switch over, because again, I have no further slides. All right, so now I'm going to share my screen, and all right, so I think you guys are sharing and seeing my screen, and we're going to jump into EPM Cloud Framework. So again, the Oracle EPM Cloud, what's really exciting about this offering is it combines a number of different business processes. So this cloud framework you're going to see across the EPM processes, whether you're talking about planning or you're talking about close and consolidation. If you create reporting cubes in the EPM Cloud, it's the same framework. PCM, profitability and cost management, also is on the EPM Cloud framework, although it is a little bit different and has some nuances. But for the most part, this is kind of your common experience, both from a user perspective and an administrative perspective for EPM Cloud, which provides a number of different benefits. So your users, are going to know how to navigate systems, navigate these interfaces, be able to interact with a lot of different business processes, and it's the same experience for them. Same thing from an administrative standpoint. So, if you know how to support and administer planning, you know how to support and administer financial close and consolidation cloud. So again, very common experience. We're going to kind of talk through what the life is like. We'll start from an end user perspective, and then we'll jump into some of the administrative interfaces as well. So what you are seeing right now is you're seeing the home screen. I'm going to have a welcome panel over here. Welcome, Tracy. If I want to, I can have my picture, which I feel like we now need to do in these days of coronavirus, just to add that personal touch, because we're not seeing people face to face on a regular basis. And then I'll see any announcements that have been communicated to me, any tasks that are due and assigned. So I can click on these, and these provide hyperlinks to be able to view this information. So great way to communicate with users. They can immediately see things that are going on. I also have the ability to access any recent, so what were some of the recent, whether it be a form or report that I was interacting with the system, so I can click on my recent activity. I can also save things to my favorites. So then that way, if I just want to always jump into my enter expenses form, I have the ability to jump to that. In the center, in the main part of the EPM Cloud framework, is where you have your cards and clusters. Now, this is designed to be a lot like your iPhone. You know, we don't have to have hours and hours of training on our iPhones. We can kind of navigate the applications that we have, be able to jump in those, and it's very intuitive. And that's similar to the experience we're trying to replicate here in the EPM Cloud. So here, if I click on financials, I can see, okay, I can jump to revenue, I can jump to expense, I can jump to balance sheet. So if I click on expense, that's going to take me to kind of the experience that I see from and the different tasks that I have available to me from an expense perspective. Again, I can always click on the home button to navigate back to the home screen and be able to navigate the different cards and clusters. Now, what's great about EPM Cloud is first, I only see kind of the cards and clusters and the features and functions that have been provisioned to me. So I'm an administrator logged in right now, which means I see everything. But as an end user, we're going to kind of filter these so that we only see the processes, the tasks that they need to be able to see. We can also customize. So Oracle kind of gives us some pre-built cards and clusters, but if we want to tailor the navigation experience, that is something that can easily be done. You know, again, no coding required to do that. And I'll show you that in just a bit when we get to administration. Another way to navigate is through, some people call it the hamburger, some people call it the pancake stack. This is the Navigator. So again, I have access to the same, again, based on my security, kind of the same, same set of information that I can access through the cards and clusters. I can navigate through from the Navigator, and I'll see just what I have access to. Now notice that here is also where, like, if I wanted to jump into account reconciliation, if I wanted to jump into FCC, if I wanted to jump into narrative reporting, I can have these connections across the EPM framework. I can also, if I wanted to, I could actually just have a card here that said account reconciliation and, you know, had my account reconciliation task. I can add cards and clusters here on the home screen and provision. So that users, again, don't really have to know and even care that they're navigating across different EPM instances. It's a common UI for them. So really helpful, you know, process, whether I'm navigating here through the Navigator, or again, I'm using these cards and clusters to jump through. So let's jump in a little bit more to kind of talk through some of the UIs and the way that you can build experiences for users. So again, Oracle will pre-build, if you enable some of the pre-built modules like financials, capital, workforce, they're going to, and what I'm showing you right here is the pre-built modules for financials. But again, you can tailor this if you want to, again, and in some cases you may be creating custom applications, reporting applications, so you'll kind of create this experience for users. But you have the ability to, once I've selected a particular card and cluster, I have a horizontal navigation option where users can, here I'm at my expense kind of home screen where I'm looking at an expense dashboard. I can create a navigational, horizontal navigational experience where they can click across a number of different tabs that I define across and be able to interact with the system. So again, Oracle will pre-build some of this for you, but then you can add to, tailor, and then create your own if you would like. I also have a vertical navigation option as well. So, so here, this is kind of my expense home, you know, and this icon helps us understand kind of from an overview. We've probably got some graphs and charts to help us understand our expense forecasts. I can also, this is kind of the planning section. So this is where we can look at our driver-based planning, assumptions and inputs. We can look at trend-based assumptions. So again, within this vertical, I can then have the horizontal experience for that particular tab. So same thing. So if I click on, you know, within the expense card, I have a number of different forms, reports, and interfaces that I can access from a user perspective to complete, in this case, my expense planning process. Now, if I'm in FCC, I can do these same things. And again, FCC has a number of pre-built options for us as well. So if we're needing to review consolidation status, if we're wanting to be able to input in some adjustments, see kind of consolidated results, I can have the same kind of navigational experience within the FCC environment as well. Okay, so hopefully, and again, at any point, I can come up here to the home button and then jump us back into the home screen. One other thing, and I'm going to talk about it in just a bit, is that, again, this is primarily the web interface. There is also an option for users. If you have some diehard Excel users, they can access content in Excel as well. So we're going to see that in just a bit. I did want to just show at any point, this is my user ID where I'm logged in. And again, as an administrator, I have the ability to recreate services and do some navigation administrative activities, but users will be able to access help. They can access Cloud Customer Connect, which is a really great place for all Oracle customers and partners in Oracle to collaborate. So when you have ideas on new features or enhancements, or you're having an issue or a bug, this is where you can jump into Cloud Customer Connect and see if somebody else had the same issue that you've had. This is where you can also access support and feedback. So if you're having a bug, you're having an issue, you've kind of got built-in connections to be able to connect to and log those SRs that you may be having with the system. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys is the downloads. So I mentioned that web is the primary interface, but there are going to be some client tools that you may want to take advantage of. So EPM Automate, if you want to create some automations and some scripts to run for your nightly processes, automated processes. If you want to use the predictive planning extension in SmartView, that's available. You always want to keep up to date the latest version of SmartView, so you can access that via the downloads page. And again, SmartView is that way for you to interact with the data plans. So you can enter plans, you can run rules, you can do ad hoc analysis. SmartView is your main tool to do that in Excel. You also have some planning extensions. So there's the administrative extension. So if you want to use this option to maintain dimensions in Excel, you can use that as well. And then if you are using strategic modeling, which I strongly recommend you guys, take advantage of this tool within the EPM Cloud framework. Or well, within the EPM Cloud, there's an add-in for strategic modeling that you can install, so that some of the strategic modeling activities you may do over the web, some of them you may want to do in Excel. Me personally, there's a lot of stuff I like to do in the Excel version of strategic modeling. So just know, again, how you get to those downloads so that you always have the latest and greatest is in this downloads page. So which is really helpful from helping users make sure you stay on the current versions in the cloud. It's much easier in this cloud world than some of the things that we had to do in the on-premise world. All right, so that is the basics of kind of from a navigation, where are your options, using the hamburger to navigate, or the pancake stack. And again, we have our cards and clusters. So with that, and hopefully, I was having some internet issues this morning, so I've rebooted my home router, so I was hopefully not going to have any issues during the live demo. This is why I don't like doing live demos, because I feel like everything works great until I'm showing this live to you guys. Okay, so let's jump into now some of the specifics. So we've got kind of the overall navigation flow. Let's talk a little bit about the different UIs that users can work with. So as an administrator or a power user, you can create these dashboards to present kind of summary information so that users can see in a visual manner what's going on with their plan and forecast, or if you're in FCC, what's going on with actuals, kind of being able to track and see that information. And typically this is, again, either administrator or a power user creating these for users. What you are seeing here are the pre-built dashboards that come with financials. So it's kind of got some, information. We can see how our actuals forecast, have been tracking over different years. You can see bar charts, line charts. We can see different types of information. And I'll show you in just a bit how to create these dashboards. Definitely non-IT required to create and or edit these dashboards. The other way that users can interact with the system is through what's called data forms or forms. So here we're looking at, I've clicked on my expense planning tab. So we can see the way that Pre-Built Financials delivers expense planning is I've got this driver-based planning tab, which has the different drivers that I'm going to be using to plan different expense accounts. And then I can see the resulting calculated driver-based expenses. So if I look, you'll notice that I have this these hyperlinks up at the top. So this is what's called your point of view. And a lot of times what we can do is create these forms to be very dynamic so that it's kind of a general template format, and then you allow users to be able to change. So here I'm looking at my sales and sales US entity. And again, based on my access, I have the ability to navigate my entity structure. So I can, if I'm in sales US, I can, select my member here. If we wanted to change the point of view to sales Canada, we can do that. And I click OK. And the form and the interfaces will refresh for the new entity that I have selected. So you can see there's no data here for Sales Canada. I'm going to jump back. But in real world, again, if you've got access, those things would have either been calculated, loaded in for that particular entity. So again, it's a dynamic process based on our security. So I'm going to go back. We're going to change this back to Sales US. Notice that I was navigating the hierarchy that was built within the dimension, but I can also use the search capability as well. So if I just start to type in something, I can use the search capability to select to search based on the member selection. So here, the other thing that I have done in this form and my point of view is that notice that my expense driver, I've got it focused on travel and entertainment expense drivers and travel and entertainment expense. So I kind of picked this example because to be a little bit ironic in today's world of Corona. So again, the financials has kind of got some pre-built logic for us to calculate driver-based expenses for travel and entertainment. Again, this is where you can go in and you can, if you look at some of the expense drivers that are available for us, we have marketing expense drivers, facility expense drivers. This is typically where you will build in your own drivers. Each one of you will have if you're in the healthcare in the healthcare world, kind of your number of patients, inpatients, admissions, there's a lot of kind of volume statistical information that may drive a lot of your expenses. So what you can do as part of the financials framework is you can configure those there. So again, just in today's world of Corona, where we're not actually traveling, I thought this would be kind of funny for the demo because it's amazing how some of that has changed where, using current year actual average or using prior year average, and this is probably prior year average, wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for travel and entertainment because we're not really doing a lot of travel right now. But for example, you can see this form is filtered for travel and entertainment expense drivers, and then I can see, the actual expense that's going to be calculated. So based on kind of this filter in my data form, whatever, then I see those particular I see those drivers that have been assigned underneath the travel and entertainment expense. So I can see trips, night per trip, our average airfare, our hotel per night, and then maybe some meal expense percentages. And then what's great about EPM is, again, we can load in information based on actuals, and then we can calculate what the forecast is using pre-built trends that are available to us. So we can use current year actual average, current month actual. We can use a forecast average. We can do a year over year, or we can do a monthly growth. So we've got some pre-built trends that we can take advantage of. Users can select these, and then they can even then layer in a percent increase or decrease. So then based on that, it's going to actually, this is my rolling forecast form. I like showing you guys just the regular year total form. I'll show in just a moment. So you can see for FY20, we've got this information, what's been calculated, and then you can layer in adjustments, and then this will calculate your drivers. So then based on these drivers, then what happens is we can then see our driver-based expenses, and those have been calculated. So I don't want to get too much into kind of the planning processes because we're going to talk about that next week. But what I'm hoping to show you guys and hope and understand is that you can set up forms where you can load in actuals, and then you can have calculated values. You can have direct input values where users can input in changes. You'll see that the form is highlighted yellow where there's been a change but hasn't been saved. So the users can then save, and then it's going to update your total columns. So these forms are great for interacting with data. From a numerical standpoint, you can also have some free-form text information, and then as you can see, even some of the interactions can be a series of drop-downs. Okay, so with that, I won't go too much into kind of the planning processes because that'll be next week. But hopefully you can see how the forms can interact, and then see that you can also have graphs and charts, editable dashboards and graphs and charts right alongside your direct input interfaces in your forms. So I'd like to show you a few more just features within forms that users can interact with. So I'm jumping into this particular form, which is just like a straight input form that users can input. And some of the things that are just, native within the Planning Cloud is the ability to enter in data from a time period standpoint, and you can see that the data will spread back. So I can have some built-in spreading capabilities, which is just nice. So if you want to do some adjustments, it'll save that information and put it back in. The other thing is if we click on our data tab, I see several features and functions. And again, these are available across the UI. So you can, cut and copy paste values across your cells. You also have the ability to add attachments. You can add comments, which is helpful, if you're trying to explain why you're changing something, an assumption that you've made. And then you can also see the change history. So if you wanted to see what was the old value, what was the new value, if it had been enabled, again, this is something that your administrator will turn on, you can actually see how the data changed, which is a helpful feature. You have the ability to adjust data. So here, instead of kind of keying in, let's just say, you know what, I want to adjust and increase, let's say these are our meals, right? So we're going to decrease this by 50%. So you can just key in and planning will do the math for you. So you don't have to have your offline Excel where you kind of calculate some of these values. And then what's great is then you could kind of play around with those numbers. So if you're like, well, no, that doesn't look exactly right. So you can see and it'll adjust and calculate based on that. So then you can click apply. And so again, notice I put that at a quarter level, so then it's spread down to my lower level months. And then I can click save and it'll save those changes. There's also some features if they've been enabled for the form related to allocation and spreading. So here I'm showing you spreading across periods, which just happens out of the box from a period perspective. But if you wanted to, let's say, spread from an upper level account or upper level entity or product, you can use some spreading features there. If you want to, you can also apply some formatting to your forms. You can save formatting and define some formatting options here within this web interface. So that's kind of the basics of interacting with forms. I did want to show you guys, kind of drag Excel over here. So this is that same, so users can connect to the EPM Cloud, and then I can open up that same form. Hopefully this didn't time me out. I can open up this same form in Excel here. So notice that it already has those updated numbers, right, that I had keyed in over the web. So if I refresh, I always get the latest and greatest information. Users can use those same features that we talked about. So if I come here to Q3, I can use the ribbon above. So here is that same adjust feature. So again, if I wanted to decrease by 50%, adjust data, so you can see it decreased it and then added in that value. Cell actions is where you can see, okay, if I wanted to add in a comment, so we wanted to say, well, we can add in a comment, decreased by 50% due to virus. So we can save that and then click close. And so then we've got a comment there. Notice now it has a blue, it's a little bit faint, but it's got an outline. So that's how you know, hey, there's a comment there. So again, you can right click and go to cell comments and you can see that. So again, and multiple folks can kind of comment on the same intersection. Now what's happening behind the scenes, again, as I click save and I submit, or as I submit our data, there's calculations that are running behind the scenes or could be running behind the scenes. But I also could, if I wanted to, if there's a business rule I wanted to run just independently, you can actually run business rules here. A lot of times what we try and do in our EPM Cloud projects is we try and have those things run behind the scenes when a calculation needs to happen, but you could also have the ability to run rules here. So same forms are accessible. Notice here you see your same point of view. So again, that same experience of being able to change the point of view and navigate your hierarchy. So again, and this is based on your security. So I would only see the entities in this example that I have access to. I'll take a moment and just really quickly while we're here, talk about dimensions. So within your EPM Cloud, applications, kind of the core of the applications is building the application and the data around data elements and hierarchies that business users own, understand and recognize. So again, here we've got our entity hierarchy. We also oftentimes have a product hierarchy. And here we've got entity in kind of a geographical format built into the same dimension. Sometimes those are separate. So a lot of times, you know, how you've built your segments in your chart of accounts in your ERP, those will translate over into dimensions into your EPM applications. Now, you do not always build every single segment that you have in your ERP in EPM. You may only pull over a portion of those. You may combine segments from your ERP into a single dimension in your EPM application, but you want those to be in sync, you know, so that you can be able to understand and reconcile between the systems. But what's great about EPM is we can build these hierarchies to really facilitate reporting and analysis. So this may be my main tree for my ERP, but I might have kind of an alternate hierarchy that I want to build and group things maybe a little bit differently just to see reporting and slicing, dicing, you know, kind of using a different perspective. So EPM allows you to do that very easily where your ERP is not. It's a little bit more rigid. So that's part of why you use EPM, both from a planning forecasting perspective and from a reporting standpoint, is again, you can be consistent with your ERP, but then you've got a lot more flexibility for different subtotals, different groupings, and things that you want to just see from a, you know, an analysis perspective. Other dimensions that you will oftentimes see is like a scenario dimension. A scenario dimension is where you have typically your forecast budget, and then notice I can have built-in calculations for my different variances. So again, the idea is to build in calculations into these applications so that you know, users can just retrieve and pull the data. You know that everybody is using the same logic and reporting on the same numbers versus creating, you know, and recreating and duplicating logic, and that may or may not be right outside of the system in Excel. So a scenario dimension from a planning perspective, oftentimes you have a version dimension where you may want to have multiple versions of your forecast. And certainly in today's world, of coronavirus, where, you know, we don't know what's happening and trying to plan is very tricky. So what you have to do is you have to plan different scenarios using different assumptions, so that way you've got action plans in place depending on what happens with this virus. And if we get a vaccine or if we don't get a vaccine, you know, you're definitely going to want to have multiple versions of your forecast so that you can, you know, very quickly act depending on what happens in today's world. If you've enabled currency, you can do that. So those are typical types of dimensions. Notice here I've got a period dimension where I've got my, year total, my quarters rolling up, and then my months rolling up to a quarter. And then of course, account is another typical dimension where you have, these may be your GL accounts rolling up to different reporting line items. So those are dimensions. Hopefully that makes sense, because that's kind of a core component to understand within the EPM Cloud. Okay, so I think we've talked through forms and being able to input data. Notice that you can input data from an end user perspective if I've given them access. I can also use forms to just, be able to view information as well. So sometimes you'll create this and users won't have access. It'll just be a gray form and they have the ability to just view information. Now, what's great about SmartView is that if I've given them access, they also have the ability to kind of jump into ad hoc mode, so that if they don't like this format, they can, kind of notice I jumped into ad hoc mode and a bunch of different options came up on my planning ad hoc ribbon. They can change the form if I've granted them access. So let's say we really just wanted to focus on travel and entertainment expenses. I didn't want to see everything else. I can just select those accounts and I can click keep only. And let's say I want to be able to input this information in for not just sales US. I can zoom out from the hierarchy. I can zoom in. And then notice here, I now could, plan my travel expenses across multiple entities. So again, whether I'm in ad hoc mode, or and within the forms, I can still be able to interact data, submit it, and then notice how those things kind of roll up, both from a period perspective. And again, depending on settings that we've had, we want to try and have these aggregations be as quickly as possible. And sometimes they can be entirely dynamic. So ad hoc perspective, users have the ability to kind of jump in, create their own forms. And again, if I've provisioned them access, they have the ability to save this format. So that way, if they just want to reuse it, they can save this and then re-access it, next month when they're ready to update their forecasts. Trying to think if there is anything else I wanted to show you guys. This is really just, kind of hitting the very beginning of SmartView. The power is, again, I'm connecting, I'm retrieving data, analyzing data very quickly. And I didn't need to have, SQL. I didn't need anybody to create a report for me. So you can kind of, see how users can very quickly kind of keep only, zoom in, they can zoom back out. If we wanted to zoom all the way down to just all of the months, I don't actually want to see the quarters in my view. Again, you're going to have some users who are click the button users that will not want to do this, but you may likely have a lot of users that do want to do this. So it's just a matter of provisioning and then just some basic training on kind of how to use SmartView. Here, if we wanted to, I'll just show you really quickly. Let's say we're creating maybe a report and I keep only. You can also pivot things very quickly. So you kind of get maybe a travel and entertainment expense. Here, I have the ability to, right now I'm using cell styles, which tell us, okay, this is read only. But if I wanted to create kind of a report in Excel, this probably isn't the most attractive report. So under options, you have the ability and formatting. You can say, oh, do I want to use Excel styles or do I want to use Excel formatting? So I can say, you know what, nope, for this, I'm creating a report, which granted, really for the most part, if you're creating reports, a lot of times we like you guys, if it's a repeatable report that you need to run on a regular basis, you'll use narrative reporting. To create that. But let's say this is a one-off report that somebody has asked for. I don't really think I'm going to need this again. So then this is where then you can start applying your, your formatting. So if I bold, and bear with me, this may not be the most attractive report. We can add, our dollar signs here. So you can add your formatting. So then that way you save this Excel workbook, but then as the underlying data changes, again, you can refresh and then the formatting will stick. And there's a way you can turn off the automatic. That's one of the options to turn off the automatic refresh of the data. So again, I can come back, reapply. And then as we refresh, you know, it kind of keeps that same format. And we can insert in titles and those types of things. So basics of forms. So let's talk a little bit more about the reporting. So again, if you have one-off reports, you know, that you just need it, Smart View Excel is a great way to do it. Super easy, you guys saw, and very quickly. But there's also, there's two different reporting options available to you within the EPM Cloud. If you're in the EPM Cloud, I recommend you use narrative reporting, which is a separate business process. And that's where you can create nicely formatted reports across EPM Cloud solutions. So that's definitely the direction. What I'm going to show you here, there is a financial reporting option that's embedded within this specific instance. Mainly, I'm going to show you running this report because narrative reporting looks the exact same. The advantage of narrative reporting is it can go across all of your different processes, where this reporting option that's native within the instance, I can only create reports against the cubes within this application. But the kind of look and feel, so if I wanted to be able to run like an income statement, you can provide prompts to users so you can make very dynamic reports. You're not hard coding reports. You know, users can run these nicely formatted reports, and they can access them both in HTML mode, or they can access them in a PDF, right? So you can, and they can actually change this. If you wanted to export it to Excel, you can do that as well. So again, and you've got here where if you wanted to say, well, no, I actually want to run this report for forecast. Again, you're using that same point of view concept, where again, you're creating, whether it's a form, whether it's here, it's a nicely formatted report or a dashboard, you want these to be dynamic. So again, based on the user security and based on what they select, you're not having to create, you know, 100 different reports. You maybe have like 20 core reports, and then they can select the entity for which they want it to run. Here, if we've got total product and I just want to see it based on, you know, individual products, you have lots of different ways to kind of set up the interaction so that the report layout's the same, but they have the ability to kind of filter and run this report, you know, and see charts and graphs kind of in a nicely formatted option. So that's reports. And again, what I'm showing you is native within the application. What I recommend is, again, we create these reports in narrative reporting because it's going to give you a more kind of comprehensive solution across the EPM Cloud. The last kind of UI that I wanted to show you guys is, again, the dashboards, which we saw some of those dashboards in, you know, just by using the cards and clusters. But if you wanted to just jump to a dashboard itself and just run a dashboard, you know, again, depending on my access, I can search for a dashboard, and here you can actually view the dashboard. If I have been provisioned, I can actually edit the dashboard, you know, and I can change. So these are kind of using those like key metrics to kind of bring attention. But let's say we wanted to, you know, change the format of this expense trend from a line to a bar chart. We could do that, and then you see kind of the updated charts. And again, there's a lot of properties, so you can kind of set how you want these to look. So again, if I don't want to save that change, I can just close. No, I don't want to save that one. If I wanted to create a dashboard, where we are today in the EPM Cloud world is we have two different ways to create dashboards. So there's kind of this legacy or the first iteration of dashboards, and there's actually a new dashboard 2.0 that is built on kind of the Oracle Analytics Cloud framework. It's a very different experience. So let me just really quickly show you guys when you're creating a report, again, in the kind of the legacy dashboard experience, this is where you can, you know, it's just kind of a click and drag where you can select forms. And then let's say we wanted to have create like a direct expense entry. Let's change the point of view so we actually see some data. We've got data here for FY20. So it's that same report, but then what I can do is, again, if I wanted to change this to be a bar chart, not sure what that's going to look like. You can change kind of the formatting. You can change the, if we try maybe a line, and I may want to tweak kind of how all of that looks. But just so you see, you can see how you can create very quickly a dashboard you give it a name. So this is our expense entry dashboard. It really probably needs some work. But we could save it. And then again, we save that dashboard. We can assign access depending on the dashboard, and then you have the ability to actually run it. So then as you make changes here within the dashboard, you can then see your graph and chart updated down below. But super easy, super simple to create dashboards. So that's kind of the legacy or the original dashboards 1.0. The 2.0 gives you a little bit different flavor. This looks a lot like Oracle Analytics Cloud and data visualization. So, and right now you're probably going to be using both because the 2.0 doesn't have complete parity with some of the features and functions in dashboards 1.0. So you're probably going to use both. So here's what I like about this one and kind of the direction that it's going is, here it kind of just asked me a question like, okay, what data do you want to access? And so let's say we want to connect to our financials cube. So I pick the cube that I want to run. And here I can say, you know what, I want to look at revenue. So if I have, let's pick our total revenue number. I want to look at total product. And I want to look at total markets. So you can just kind of start to type in, and let's say I want to look at this for your total. And see, it kind of already created that for us. And then again, as you start to kind of build out your query, you can then come in and you can change, okay, so I want to see that as a bar chart, not just as a grid of numbers. So it's a little bit different experience, a little bit more dynamic, and it's got many more charting options. Some of these charting options are not available in the dashboards 1.0. So for example, like a waterfall chart is a new one that's not available. So again, you're probably right now, maybe for the next, I don't know, 6 months-ish, maybe a year, you may be using both while they continue to build out 2.0. 2.0 is where it's going, definitely direction forward, but right now there's still some features like editable dashboards that are only available in dashboards, the legacy dashboards. So again, you can save this and again, provision access, and then folks can use it. So hopefully that makes sense. So primary interfaces for users are your dashboards, your data forms, and your reports. And again, most of the time, while they can use these cards and clusters to jump directly to dashboards or data forms, most of the time you're going to create a navigational flow that kind of combines all of those elements together, so they don't really have to know or hunt or look for things. You'll probably build UIs for your main set of users so that they can access that information. All right, so the other thing that users may need to do, and I showed you this in SmartView, is they may want to run different business rules. And again, depending on the access that we've been provisioned, they can also go directly and kick off rules. Now, what I would say is 99% of the time, we actually will assign rules to run on the forms so that and users will click save, or they can, I'll show you within a form, you can assign, what are the appropriate business rules here whenever I want to run, expenses. So this can calculate form if we need to aggregate. Again, a lot of times we're doing that for users. They don't even have to know. But if they wanted to kick off rules, they have the ability to do so here. We can also set up an approvals process. I'm going to save that for a later webcast. So what I wanted to do next with a little bit of time that we have left is walk through some of the administrative items and the administrative UIs. So that was kind of the basics from an end user perspective. I'm hoping I didn't miss anything. So within Planning Cloud, there is this ability to create task lists, which is great. So, again, these are my tasks for my departmental plan. This is changing a little bit because now with the EPM Cloud subscription, you have access to Task Manager, and which is an even more kind of comprehensive task management process. It originally just came with FCC and it was called Close Manager. And then they realized, hey, we could use this for any of our processes. So Again, you can create task lists here, and or you could actually develop task lists in Task Manager within an FCC instance, or if you create just an instance, kind of to just manage all of your tasks, you can also use that option as well. So then that way you can, here's all the tasks that need to be completed, and then you can keep track of, who's completed what. You can run reports to understand what's been done. So that's another tool that users can use to kind of follow what are the processes that they need to do. Okay, so from an administrative standpoint, I'm going to start with application overview. And again, I'm going to hit just the high points from an administrative perspective, but just so you can see kind of where you will go to do various activities. So application overview gives you an overview of what are the cubes within the particular application. So if you're in FCC, you're going to see your console cube and your rates cube. Here in the planning cloud, this is a planning cloud instance that has all of the modules enabled. So you'll see FS is the financials cube, WFP is the workforce cube, CPX is the capital cube, and we have PFP, which is the projects cube. And then notice we also have some custom applications too, or custom cubes within this application. So you can kind of get a picture of your overall cubes. You can click on the cubes tab, and then within those you can select, and you can kind of just see some of the data. You then can look at the dimensions for the overall application. So here we can see all the dimensions that exist for this application. Now, not all of these dimensions exist across all cubes. So you can see for plan 1, these are the dimensions. If we look at, let's say, the workforce cube, notice here you see the employee dimension, you see the job dimension, and these are hyperlinks that will take you to the dimension editor where you can view, okay, so I've got my job dimension, I've got my total jobs, and I can see all of the different jobs that have been created. So this is the dimension editor where you can maintain dimensions, you can import dimensions, you can also maintain dimensions in Excel. And again, if I switch back over to, let's say, the financials cube, you can see the dimensions that exist within financials. And you'll notice, like, you won't see employee or workforce because that doesn't make sense, right? That makes sense in the workforce cube and not here. So really, we just see, let's say, product dimension, entity dimension, scenario. So again, and these are hierarchies, built on the structures so that users can, report and analyze slice and dice information. And then again, you can have alternate roll-ups so that if you want things to just see a different way, you can do that as well. So managing dimensions is part of this. Activity reports, this is great just to kind of understand and monitor what's going on with your application. So if you're wanting to just see who's doing what, how many time, what are people, spending time on. So if we click the activity report, we can get some, some different top 7 user requests by duration, how long things are taking. So just is great to kind of monitor, but then if you hear of issues, this is where you can delve and get a little bit more visibility into the system. There are some overall application settings that you can define for the application. Valid intersections is a helpful tool so that you prevent users from entering data in wrong combinations. So there are some pre-built ones that come with the financials modules, but then you can create your own. So if only certain products are sold by certain entities, you can define those valid intersections so that you don't get any wonky data. Data exchange. So this is where you're going to create your data integrations. So again, and this is the new UI, this is where everything is going. And now I'll tell you, there's also a tool called data management that you're probably going to be using a little bit of both right now in this period, but eventually kind of the full data integration, how you create a data integration, you're going to define it here. Data integrations, the difference between a data map and a data integration is truly when you're connecting to your ERP system to import in data. You are maybe pushing your plans, forecasts back to your ERP. Hopefully we don't have to do that as much anymore because most of your reporting is coming out of EPM Cloud. But you may want to share your plan data with FCC. Lots of use cases. This is where you'll build your data integrations. Data maps are ways to share data between all of those different cubes within the application. This is also where you're going to define integrations to kind of push data back and forth with your strategic modeling models and your long range plans. So I mentioned just what before I jump back, the other interface that you will likely use, for the immediate time is data management. So again, this is kind of the underlying engine for creating data integrations within the EPM Cloud. There is an EPM integration agent that allows you to connect directly to on-premise systems, SQL databases. So the need for flat files is definitely reducing. And again, eventually this interface, I think, is going to be built into that data integration tab in the web UI. They're just kind of slowly moving over those features. But this is where, again, you can, access data load rules, which will define, okay, I want to load data from here to here. And this is where you can execute them. And again, those can be scheduled as well. So there's kind of a whole process to set up the integration. So I won't go through all of that now, but it's kind of a guided process between setup and workflow to perform data integrations. And eventually, those are all going to be kind of some of the features are here and available, so you can do some integrations using this UI. Eventually, everything's going to be here. You also have the ability to create jobs. So you can schedule things with EPM Automate, but you can also schedule jobs here within the web UI. So you can, if you wanted to schedule running a rule or importing data or exporting data, you can do that. And so you just kind of, if you're wanting to schedule it, whatever time it is, what do we want to call this? So this can be like our data backup. We want to export data on a regular basis. I can click next, and then this is where you can define, okay, yep, I want to pick the export FS that I have defined. I click next and click finish, and then the job will run. And then at that point, as jobs run, you'll be able to see all of that information in the activity. Configure is the next option. So this is, again, only in Planning Cloud. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's configure in FCC. So this is where if you wanted to configure the modules, usually you do this when you're first setting up the application, and then you don't really come back to this unless you're actually making some changes. So this is really more of a Planning Cloud configuration standpoint. And again, it's got kind of a wizard-driven process to see what you want to turn on and off within the application. And then it creates kind of a list of tasks that also need to be completed to complete the configuration of financials or workforce, et cetera. All right. Let's see. Okay, so that's from an administrative perspective. There's also some other tools. So if you look here, those navigation flows. So a navigation flow is, again, those cards and clusters. And so notice you can have a number of different navigation flows, and then you can assign them to different groups. So that way you can have a different experience for users. And this is where you can, right now only the default is active, but you can have multiple ones. This is where you can create your own or change the existing navigation flows. So if let's click on financials here. This is for the financial analyst group. You can see here we've got these cards and clusters, but if I wanted to add in a new one, so I can click add card, and then I can give it a name. I'm just going to call it Tracy. And then again, this is where you can define kind of, do we want the horizontal? Do we want the vertical navigations? And then you can start to add in the artifacts. So again, creating these navigation flows. And so this is where, again, you can pick a form. You can pick a dashboard, you can pick a report. And again, if you've got connections into financial close, narrative reporting, you can create cards and clusters against those applications. So account reconciliation, PCM. So again, if you define the connections, then you can actually create cards and clusters to be able to do that. So that was not a full demo, but mainly my main point there is just to show you it's a wizard-driven process. No, you sure you want to proceed? Yes. There's no coding involved. This is really, could be your FP&A. Likely you're going to have some EPM Cloud administrators, but those administrators do not have to be. Are you sure you want to cancel? Yes. Do not have to be techie people at all. So it's all kind of a wizard-driven process. Let's see. Oh, auditing. This is where, again, you can, if we wanted to enable auditing and then we wanted to see who changed what data when, you can tag kind of what you want to track. A lot of times you're just really going to pick data and any business rules that have been launched. Maybe if anybody runs clear details or copy, you have the ability to do that. So again, you can track from an administrative perspective and from an end user perspective. Daily maintenance. So every night, Oracle will do daily maintenance. It's about an hour. You can control the time of when that happens. And then, how long after scheduled maintenance do you want to update the content? So you can, provide a little bit of control as they apply those patches and run some of their backups. Migration. So this is how you will take backups of your applications. And then again, if you need to import or migrate across. So for example, if we wanted to take this entire application, including any native reports that were created, any data management integrations, any business rules, and then we can click export or we can click backup. So backup creates an entire LCM. If you wanted to, you can also just export individual artifacts. So you don't have to do the entire application. Let's say you're in development and you have created some new forms for FCC, for the financials cube. So you can actually just go in and select just those particular forms and just export those forms and move them over without moving the whole application. So same thing, from a data forms, dimensions, business rules, you can kind of piece by piece choose migration, or you can choose to move everything. Once you click export, what will happen is then you'll see that that export show up as a snapshot here that can then be downloaded. So you've got actions where you can then download and then you can import it into whichever target application you're wanting to import. Now, this artifact snapshot is the nightly snapshot that is taken by Oracle. So this is your backup from the day of the application from the day before. Now, the next day, this is going to be overwritten. Okay, so this is over. It only keeps one by default. It only keeps one of these. So typically what we recommend, folks, is we create a automation script that will download this snapshot and keep 7 days, 10 days, whatever your policy is, keep 7 days of snapshots available to you. But this is great. So then if you ever needed to get back to the day before, all you have to do is click on artifact snapshot and you can re-import the snapshot. So very powerful feature there. So there's a few other things related to preferences and variables that are underneath administration. I did also want to show you how, so there are two different ways to create calculations. So there are ways that users can create, if you enable it, they can use Excel, they can create Excel formulas and save them and actually calculate it. So that is a feature from a user perspective. If you wanted to have some user calculations, now for the most part, you're going to want to standardize the larger calculations. So that's what I'm going to show you now. But just know that there are some features within Planning Cloud that allow you to, in EPM Cloud, if I say Planning Cloud, EPM Cloud, for users to be able to create some user formulas. So one way, I like showing this because I'm kind of a native girl at heart. This is the native dimension editor. This is where, let's just look at our scenario dimension. So if I mentioned that we can create these calculations. So here, if I click on, this is what's called a member formula. So if this is my actual versus plan scenario, so we can assign member formulas and define them here in the UI. So I'll take just a moment to refresh. We can define a calculation here so we can do the variance for, so using it, there's an @var function. We could also just, with the @var function, what's great about that is it's intelligent enough to understand that, if you're a revenue account, you need to create positive and negative variances differently than expense accounts. So the function will do that. But this is where, again, you can just create some simple logic to do the calculation. So member formulas, are one way to create calculations. You can also create business rules. So this is where you'll go into, and again, if you have access, this is usually power users and administrators that are not required to be IT people, again, because the logic and the syntax is very Excel-like, than it is any kind of programming language. So we can go into create and manage rules, and this is called Calculation Manager. And so this is where, again, you'll create some of those, kind of larger rules that run. So if, for example, I'm looking at, and again, in the pre-built modules, Oracle has created a lot of these for us. So for example, we have like the calculate actuals business rule. If I go ahead and open up this, it's going to open up and it's saying, hey, if you update this, then we won't, we're going to ignore this in any application updates. So you can tweak these if you want to. Oracle won't overwrite them. You can also create your own. So again, Oracle's already created this for us. And essentially, it may look complicated at the beginning. Really, all it's doing is calculating a dimension and aggregating then the rest. So it's a pretty simple process to create these scripts. So let's just show you one quick example. So if I wanted to go up and create a rule, I can click new. So it's already kind of filled in. So I'm going to just call this Tracy. And then you can create the logic. So what's great is I get all of these different kind of script components over. So if I was wanting to create maybe an aggregation rule, I can just drag and then it's going to provide me a wizard driven process where it says, okay, and it's got a lot of documentation, right? So you can kind of read through, and this is really good training for anybody who's new to writing rules. So there's a lot of good information. So here you can define the point of view. So this is where we say, you know what, I'm only creating a rule. Again, in real life, I'd probably want to make this dynamic, but let's just say we only want to calculate actual 2019. So I can kind of hard code it if I want to, although in real life, we're probably going to use variables to make this, dynamic. And then if there's any dense dimensions that need to be calculated, in our case, no, full sparse. So this is where, okay, we want to aggregate the product dimension. And then we want to do market, and then we want to do entity. And then I can kind of click through next. Here, I don't have any partial dimensions that need to be aggregated, so I can just toggle through. I can set some of the settings. So you definitely want to kind of, be familiar with some of those to help with performance. I click finish, and then it has actually written my script for me. And so you can see it fixed, which is kind of setting your point of view. So that way this rule only runs for 2019 for actual, and then it's going to aggregate these dimensions. So it's written that script for me. Now, what I could do, just to save time, once you kind of get fluent, because you will, you're going to get fluent, so we can remove this. Once you get fluent in scripts, as you start to write these, or again, if you have a partner that's helping you implement, hopefully they're doing some knowledge transfer, you can actually write these scripts yourself. So you can come in and just, I like to input in script components so I can actually see some flows across Calculation Manager. But then like I may know that, you know what, it's actually, efficient just to go ahead and do the aggregation all in one statement versus 3. So I could, update this rule this way. I then can save and validate, and then I can deploy this so that users can run it. So Calculation Manager is where you're going to create a lot of your rules. A lot of times when you're writing scripts, I mean, it literally is going to be, revenue is equal to units times rate, right? So, and again, these are members within the database and you're defining the calculations. So the syntax, again, if you start to look at some of that pre-built rules, there's a lot in there, but just know it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can do if logic, right? So like, so this is probably like in our forecast calculation, we only want to calculate so revenue, and then we can say, And then we can add in our if statements, right, and start to build in our conditional logic. So just know that if you've built Excel formulas, and I've seen some of the workbooks that you guys have created in Excel, you can create these rules. It does require a little bit of training and knowledge. Again, but what's great is, one, you'll have a partner that will help. There are these pre-built templates that you can use to kind of jumpstart your knowledge, and there is a lot of resources available. The other thing that you can do is not only create individual rules, you can create rule sets. So that way, if you wanted to create, okay, I have these 5 rules that that need to run, you can kind of group them in a specific order. So here you can see like the out of the box PFP roll up rule actually runs the roll up, and then it pushes the data into the financial cube. So that's kind of what this is. We're actually using business rules to do those interactions. All right, so if I jump back, want to make sure I kind of hit everything from a framework perspective. That calculation manager is used in FCC. You access it a little bit different way, but FCC uses calculation manager. PCM does not. PCM has its own UI to create allocation rules, which is definitely kind of a no scripting option. But if you're doing reporting cubes, if you're doing Planning Cloud or FCC, you're going to use that calculation manager. I think we have hit most of the things in the cloud framework. So again, just remembering cards and clusters that'll be created. From an administrative perspective, you have some application tools that you can use. And then again, not all of these are going to be visible to users. Users are likely going to just be able to see preferences. Appearance, that lets you change the appearance of the EPM Cloud. So you can insert in your logo, which is great, and you can set your theme. So there's a new Redwood theme. I'm not crazy about the sky blue is my favorite right now. It feels much happier than any of the other ones. So with that, hopefully this has helped. And again, we tried to have no slides. I had kind of my demo list of all the things I wanted to show you guys. So you get a feel for the EPM Cloud framework and kind of how you navigate around, how you can complete things. Definitely not an IT required solution, which is great. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take questions today, but if you guys could just email them to info@interrel.com and we will get the answers back to you. So if you have any questions, I appreciate it if you could just email us info@interrel.com. We'll get those questions answered. And I think with that, we will go ahead and conclude the webcast. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you so much.